Many of you know I've been talking a lot lately about YouTube policies and algorithms and how they affect our show and other shows. There's been a lot of demonetization. YouTube's been barring independent political shows like ours. And there's a bigger conversation about social media and censorship also happening, which really exploded the day I was on the Joe Rogan program involving Steven Crowder and Carlos Maza and that debacle, as well as recent content and policy enforcement on Twitter. And this has really been relevant for years, but lately it's been snowballing, in particular with channels like ours and other political channels, because there's a lot of misconceptions about why YouTube and Facebook and Twitter are doing what they're doing, as well as exactly what it is that they're doing. So let's talk about how users and content creators are affected, but then talk about the big picture issues in social media and how we should be thinking about them. I'll tell you what the problems are, but I'll also tell you what the problems are not, and maybe most importantly, the solutions that we should be looking at. So, on platforms like YouTube and Twitter, the more popular you are as a content creator, the more likely you are to be targeted with censorship and demonetization if and until you get big enough to be exempted from some restrictions because of a special account status that can be available in some cases. But then social platforms will sometimes enforce policies differently when there's a high profile controversy. They'll be accused of platforming harmful speech or of being anti free speech. They start feeling the heat from the public, from one side or the other, and then they start making decisions and enforcing policies in ways we haven't necessarily seen before. And often those enforcements will happen in ways that fly directly in the face of both the letter and the spirit of the terms of service of a platform or their mission statement about free expression and dialogue or whatever. And sometimes they'll even end up making up new policies on the fly, right in the middle of a scandal. Sometimes I'll happen to agree or disagree with a specific call that a company might make, whether it's taking someone off of a platform or reversing a ban on someone who I didn't think actually deserved it. But the problem, as I've said before, is the inconsistency. A company will claim to stand for certain values, and then they'll fold under pressure when it's a better PR move to do the opposite. And it creates a completely dysfunctional ecosystem for everyone. And sometimes the problems are even more fundamental. We upload about 8 videos to YouTube a day. And on some days, as many as 75% are demonetized for not being, quote, brand safe. So we don't make any money from those videos. Sometimes it's predictable based on YouTube's demonetization guidelines, but the problem is the effect that this has on our ability to produce serious news without concerns about monetization. To be clear, I wouldn't and I haven't changed the content of the show to stay monetized on YouTube. I cover the stories that are important. YouTube can and does demonetize them, but the David Pakman Show is a small business, and I need to make projections and have an understanding of where will revenue come from. So this application of policy is a distraction from simply producing the best content we can. If YouTube will allow us to collect revenue from our videos, that's great. Or if a large portion of our videos will be demonetized, then we need to deal with it and figure out how else to fund the show. The real problem is that by all accounts, our content should be monetizable. We don't show graphic violence. We don't use profanity. I'm never sitting here using drugs or harassing people or belittling people based on their race or gender. Our content would be monetized were it not for advertisers imposing their will on YouTube and YouTube having little choice but to go along with it. This is not a left-wing, right-wing thing. People on the right like to say it's happening to them because they're conservative, but it's happening to independent political shows that are across the political spectrum, including mine. It doesn't seem to be affecting the big corporate media outlets that have YouTube channels nearly as much. And sadly, this is part of a theme we've been seeing with YouTube lately. Independent political channels on the left and right, the David Pakman Show, Kyle Kulinski, Steven Crowder, these types of people, we've realized that YouTube is in general hindering our shows and deterring people from watching, bolstering legacy corporate media outlets that have YouTube channels, whether it's CNN, NBC News, or late night talk shows. In July of 2018, YouTube actually made an announcement that they would start making, quote, authoritative news sources more visible on the platform. In a press release, YouTube said, "Today we're announcing steps we're taking with the Google News Initiative to support the future of news in online video and product features we've been working on to improve the news experience on YouTube. We believe quality journalism requires sustainable revenue streams and that we have a responsibility to support innovation in products and funding for news." They go on to say, "Authoritativeness is essential to viewers, especially during fast-moving breaking news events. So we've been investing in new product features to prominently surface authoritative videos." When you're watching a YouTube video, you see a list of other suggested videos on the right side of the page on desktop or below the video on mobile. When you're finished watching a video, before the next one plays, you see a similar set of suggested videos appear. What shows up here, these suggested videos, is controlled by YouTube's recommendation algorithm. A large portion of our traffic has always come from these suggestions. Someone's watching a video about whatever, YouTube suggests they watch another video by the David Pakman Show about a related topic. This has been a really important source of video views for us, and it's a really good way of allowing people to discover our channel for the first time. Our YouTube dashboard tells us where our video views come from, and we're now getting only about half of the recommendations that we were getting about a year ago. And the decline started right after YouTube announced they would prioritize, quote, authoritative news sources. So not only is YouTube demonetizing the views that we do get, they're also causing us to get fewer views to begin with, which hurts the channel. Now, this is not some underhanded plot to destroy the David Pakman Show. Yes, they're changing their algorithm in a way that hurts us, but I understand what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it. Sadly, this is the same reason that Breitbart and InfoWars and other extremist fake news sites don't show up in search results when you go to news.google.com. Google and YouTube want to placate advertisers by preventing accusations that they are perpetuating or allowing the monetization of misinformation, fake news, hate news, and extremist content. But the reality is that whatever the motivation, my channel, similar independent channels, which should not be lumped in with fake news and hate channels, are getting caught up in it. And frankly, it could destroy many of the channels like ours if it continues. And so far, it's continuing. We all know the types of channels YouTube wants to make less visible. The Sandy Hook conspiracy people, alt-right extremism, red pill, black pill people, misogynists, racists, homophobes, people targeting others on the basis of sexual orientation. All of the types of channels that over the years, YouTube has gotten a lot of flack for platforming. YouTube is fighting a negative image of, in part, being a garden of nut jobs and hate and extremism. YouTube wants to fix their brand and maintain their brand. I can see why they want to do that, but shows like ours are getting hurt by the algorithm to the detriment of speech and ideas. To understand how to interpret and deal with this, we need to have some shared starting point. Something that many people do, which completely fails to properly frame the conversation about censorship and demonetization, is to say that YouTube and other social media companies like Twitter and Facebook are left-wing. They say these platforms are silencing or disincentivizing speech that's politically incorrect or speech that is generally considered offensive when it comes to race, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, religion. Many people are taking this and concluding that the social media companies have a left-wing agenda. Yes, hateful or offensive speech is more likely to come from someone on the right. When Steven Crowder calls Carlos Maza a gay Mexican lispy queer and gets his videos demonetized, that's not something you're really going to hear from people on the left very often. And it's the kind of speech that's going to get you in trouble on some of these social media platforms. In that sense, it's possible that right-wingers face more repercussions than people on the left. I don't know that to be the case, but it's possible. But using that to say that these companies are fundamentally progressive or left-wing doesn't actually help us understand these issues, and it's not accurate. Conservatives have a conspiracy theory that social media companies are simply bleeding heart political activists waging an ideological war against the right. The reality is these companies have no, as companies, ethical or ideological philosophies or positions. They are motivated by business interests. These companies, by the way, as I said to Joe Rogan, are also very right-wing or libertarian, right libertarian in many ways in terms of the policies they support and the role that they play. Google is currently in an antitrust battle with the Department of Justice. Facebook is the subject of a huge antitrust investigation by the Federal Trade Commission. These companies are huge tax dodgers. They want to self-regulate. They lobby for deregulation, the same as the air polluters and the big banks and the gun manufacturers. What Google and Facebook and Twitter do every day in Washington is, in the most literal sense, the opposite of progressivism. Having an internal culture that's socially progressive, first and foremost, doesn't mean that as a company they are progressive in their public role. But in addition to that, even what appears to be left-wing internal culture is often just brand management. Their politically correct content policies and the way they enforce them and what they say publicly about content policies. It's not virtue signaling. It's a signal to their advertising clients and to their shareholders. And this should be obvious. YouTube and Twitter clearly have no authentic, principled stance on protecting offensive speech or on combating offensive speech. This was most recently demonstrated by their flip-flopping, embarrassing flip-flopping on the Crowder-Maza situation. One side got mad at YouTube. YouTube conceded. The other side got mad at YouTube. YouTube then conceded to them. They panicked. They tried to find the right balance between protecting their image in the eyes of advertisers and understanding that that's the source of their revenue, but protecting their image in the eyes of the public as well, who are the people that need to watch those advertisements. YouTube isn't evil or virtuous. Twitter isn't left-wing or right-wing. These are corporations. They exist to generate revenue and perpetuate themselves. So maybe you're saying, well, we still have this problem, though, that these companies have a monopoly on social media and they're silencing offensive speech. They're recklessly demonetizing political commentators who don't deserve it. And that is what we're faced with. A solution that's often proposed is that we regulate these companies, that we use the government somehow to enforce free speech on the platforms, which is already problematic language. They want us to treat these platforms like public squares, establish free speech protections for all of the users. But these arguments fall flat. The First Amendment protects you from censorship by the government, not by private entities. The government shouldn't be able to force a company to allow you to use their software and their networks. This isn't a civil liberties issue. Social media companies do and should have every legal right to maintain and enforce their own content policies, to prioritize certain content, to protect their brand, or for any other reason that they have, or none at all, unless they're doing something like discriminating against users of a certain race or religion, which violates the law. What government body is going to enforce so-called free speech on social media? Is it going to be Congress, whose political bias changes every few years? Will it be the FCC or the FTC, as Donald Trump is thinking of doing, whose political bias also changes every few years? We know that the current administration wants, based on this executive order that they're putting together, for them to be the ones who decide, based on their politics, who gets to say what and which platforms get punished. That's dangerous. Conservatives don't want this type of government regulation anywhere else. They just want government regulation here because things haven't been going their way. The free market has demonstrated that offensive content is bad for business. And they now want special big government nanny state protections against what is being caused by free market capitalism, quite frankly, or the version of it that we have. I'm being negatively impacted by one of these companies. YouTube is hurting me financially. They're diminishing my ability to voice my opinion. But that's not making me lose my objectivity about the rights of private companies or how impractical it would be to have the government oversee social media content. The first step in the correct direction is going to be for us to stop viewing social media as one collective thing or entity. Different social media platforms serve different purposes. Twitter has developed a service that's very different than Facebook. The mechanics are different. The culture is different. The etiquette is different. Some platforms allow porn, some don't. Some platforms allow spamming, some don't. Some platforms require you use your real name and others don't. All social media platforms are different because they're geared to different markets and have different purposes. The average person using Tumblr is different than the average person using Quora, for example, or at least they use the two platforms for very different reasons. Social media companies intentionally develop their platform to have a particular environment catered to the market they want to serve. In the same way that a platform designed for professional networking wouldn't be any good as a medium for sharing funny memes and vice versa, a platform designed to serve a somewhat universal mainstream user base and attract mainstream advertisers may not function properly as a platform for exchanging controversial ideas or vice versa. Many social media platforms that are marketed as free speech alternatives to mainstream platforms, some are I like personally, others seem to be cesspools of hate and sketchiness. But the idea of forcing that content onto privately owned platforms that don't want it and maybe financially harmed by it doesn't make sense. YouTube serves a particular purpose. It's an invaluable service to the vast number of content creators who otherwise wouldn't have a platform to so lucratively distribute their content. It's been a really great thing for most independent video creators. I've been asking for a more clear understanding of how the demonetization works as it pertains to my content. I'm not creating content that's fringe or extreme or disturbing or gory or whatever, the way that YouTube is suppressing many independent channels as if they were doing that is antithetical to what made YouTube cool and interesting to begin with. But ultimately, it is YouTube's right. It's my right to complain about it. It's my right to leave YouTube or start my own YouTube if that's what I want to do. Maybe it is actually the best business decision for them. Maybe it's just more worth it to YouTube to take a better safe than sorry approach to the way that they're demonetizing me and to just push the corporate media channels and not worry too much about the collateral damage to programs like mine. In the end, I don't know that I can do that much about it. This is why it's so important for the audiences of independent political talk shows like ours to realize that the shows can only exist unfettered through direct support from the audience, especially if the YouTube algorithm and the demonetization stuff gets worse. It's not just a talking point. It's not a way to get people to sign up for David Pakman Show memberships. It's just reality. If we don't have reliable YouTube revenue and we don't have reliable financial support from the audience, we may have to figure out something else. Maybe I'll have to get a different job. If you're not on YouTube to watch makeup tutorials or cat videos, and what you want to do is watch content like ours that's trying to shake things up, trying to deal with serious issues in an adult way, and rubbing some people the wrong way, admittedly, then maybe we all need to assess our roles as consumers of shows like this one. Even though these shows can be accessed for free, there are costs to the creators: employee salaries, employee health insurance, rent, internet, electricity, equipment, connectivity, so many other things. A political commentary show relying more on direct support from the audience than on YouTube ad revenue is actually probably a better paradigm for everybody involved. It means that if you are a patron of something that you value and you're educated and entertained by it, instead of you and your clicks becoming a commodity to YouTube's bottom line through your cable subscription or watching ads or whatever else, it would mean content creators would be more free to do and say what they want, unbeholden to advertisers. And that freedom and integrity is something that's crucial for shows in the political commentary sphere. It probably also means that you might even end up with more content creators to choose from because they'd be better funded, or you'd have higher quality content because people doing this part-time could focus on it full-time, as an example. When you pay for content, you're not just getting what you paid for, you're investing in something you value so that it can sustain and grow and improve. So this is not a promotion for our Patreon page or our membership program. This is something I personally find not only fascinating, but of crucial importance from a media studies point of view. And it's something that applies to the entire digital media industry. These are my thoughts, but it is something that is affecting online political shows like this one. And I do believe that independent political shows are particularly important to protect when we see this administration wanting to come up with new and novel ways to suppress speech they don't like and to mandate speech they do like be published, regardless of what a private company wants to do. What we ultimately need is a big picture meta shift in how we think about online content, how we consume it, and what we are willing to do to sustain it and guard it from outside influences. And I hope that's what you'll take away from this today.